Hello and welcome to our bite-sized 30-minute session brought to you in partnership with Snapshotz, Auscontact's accreditation partner, in which we'll be discussing Bleisure. Let's travel it. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. I'm Fiona Keough, CEO of Auscontact and your host. And I'm pleased to introduce special guest Darren Hirst from Westpac New Zealand, and by now a very familiar presenter, Chief Operating Officer of Snapshotz, Deepak Selvaratnam. We have a lot to share. However, if you have a burning question, please ask using the Q&A button on the control panel. And if we have time, we'll ask it at the end of the bite. If we don't get to your question and you are anonymous, we're unable to answer your question as we actually don't know who you are. If you are having technical issues, please note that on the control panel, you can click the raise hand button and the Auscontact team will rush to your aid, or you can revert to your confirmation email with the link to the webinar, and all the relevant phone numbers and access codes are available there for you. And with that, I'm going to do a quick intro of Darren and then hand the microphone to Deepak. So Darren Hirst is the Senior Manager, Everyday Banking Services, Operations and Contact Centres, Consumer Banking and Wealth at Westpac New Zealand. Darren has the largest business card in the world. Darren is an experienced senior leader with proven track record of successfully running large and diverse contact centre and operational teams with finance business units. He has worked with Westpac for over 30 years, which includes 20 plus years in Sydney and 10 years in Auckland, New Zealand. He currently leads a team of 300 plus, which includes a mix of internal and third-party employees. Darren is known for his ability to connect the dots between customer experience and employee experience, to cultivate a culture that motivates, recognises, develops and retains people, and collaborate with a diverse group of stakeholders at all levels within the organisation to drive well-balanced outcomes. And with that, we're going to welcome back to the microphone Deepak, who of course needs no introduction. Welcome, Deepak.
Thank you very much, Fiona. It's good to be back again, and I appreciate your stewardship over this last however many episodes that we've had so far over with Snapshotz Bytes. So thank you very much again. Straight on to what we're going to cover today, and that is a little bit about us for context. Talk to you a little bit about what Bleisure is and why it is important for contact center leaders. What is the data impacting contact center efficiency due to Bleisure? And thirdly, the impact on team performance, recruitment, and managing Bleisure. So without much more ado, for a lot of you, you do know who Snapshotz is, but for those who don't, Snapshotz is an audit and benchmarking tool launched in 2009, today with 3,500 plus customers across 30 countries. Some of those logos is very familiar to you. The important piece with Snapshotz is it just provides contact center leaders with a current state assessment, giving them direction based on real time benchmarks, so that they can drive decisions and the contact center experience forward based on what they see. Snapshotz is also built on global standards, which provides insights and input into the assessment. So it's a checklist that's driven by these different standards that are now globally available. And the important piece there is that with all this data, what we bring to contact center leaders is the ability to have insights into their operations, into their strategy, based on the data and experience of those from Snapshotz and those like Darren today presenting. So quickly, What is Bleisure? Bleisure is actually a term that's recently been coined. I do not know the source of it, but Bleisure really refers to those who work whilst they are traveling for leisure. Now, you might wonder and ask why that's important to contact centers. We do know that based on the data from both Snapshotz as well as remote ability, remote work capability assessment and benchmarking tool, that between 3 to 5% of agents and contact center folk do not work from the addresses they say they're working from. Now, there are several reasons for this. Relationship issues, space, domestic violence, the surroundings where they work is a bit of a challenge, connectivity issues, and all of these posing both well-being issues for that individual, asset risks, and as we will find out, performance and impact for both the customer themselves and the organization. Just as a matter of interest, I am today bleisuring, which is why you don't see me in my familiar surroundings. To support that stat that we saw earlier, where we know that between 3 to 5% of agents are working from places apart from the ones that they've nominated as their home address, we know that between 8 to 12% of people across the organization cannot work from home for various issues. And if you've been following some of our last webinars and seminars, we know that from a contact center perspective, it's even up to 30%. And it particularly affects us. So this is something we need to be pretty wary of. Similarly, 40% of us work from unsuitable remote workspaces. A garage or a loft is not possibly the optimal place to run contact center conversation out of, because it does impact you. Plus, of course, 2/3 of us, roughly, work from a shared workspace. So you could be sharing it with children, partners, and perhaps with pets. And that could be a pleasurable experience. However, it doesn't count into this 2/3 of the people that do this. Similarly, there's a whole range of health and safety issues that impact when working outside of your current workspace. Particularly, there are health and safety, and then as we can see across the screen, and also well-being issues that are probably the greatest implication when it comes to working remotely. Now, what is important in all of this is that contact center management need to be able to understand that there is a population of our people across the teams and of course across the organizations that are impacted by the fact that they cannot work from the space that they have originally meant to do. Now, I know, for instance, there's a small amount of people just with a customer of ours who have the building next door to them, the roof's been done up, and therefore, because of the sound, cannot work from that area, and they're going to go back and do stuff. So these are living things, everyday life that we as contact center supporters and leaders need to consider. There are several management implications to this. Is how do we understand what the context in which our teams are working in? How do we manage performance? And oftentimes there's a significant correlation between jagged performance and the places where they work. And then there is also the issue of supporting them as well as managing them to consistency, consistent performance when they are in situations like this. So considering these challenges, I would now, it will be great, it's an appropriate segue to hand you over to Darren, who has, with Westpac, has had significant experience and practice over these last 24 months in the whole hybrid and remote work approach, as well as understanding these segments within the teams. So Darren, without further ado, over to you.
Thanks, Deepak, and thanks for the intro, Fiona. Afternoon all. I'll just tell you a bit about the journey that we've been on. Some of this will probably sound familiar to a few of you, but I'll just kind of talk about that, and it'll just probably help you understand what we've been through and where we're at now. So obviously March 2020 was a bit of a shock to the system, to all of us. Auckland into snap lockdown. Directive from Westpac was work from home where possible. And then actually some people effectively couldn't work at all. And basically what we had was, what was called essential services, where you had staff that were deemed essential to effectively run the country, like banking being an essential service and contact centre staff being an essential part of that, being allowed to work in the office. We had a lot of our staff, in fact, pretty well all of our staff were in fact still operating on desktops back then. So the option to work from home wasn't even there. So there was a lot of reorganising. That was pretty messy. 2 metre distancing, all that sort of good stuff. We ran into productivity issues, not just from the disruption, but also tech issues with, you think you move from one desktop to another and it'll just be easy, but we'd run into issues there. We'd have phones that would work on one desk but not on another. So all that sort of fun stuff really did slow us down. And at the same time, we had a lot of customer uncertainty out there. So call volumes were through the roof, and our service levels were stressed like never before. So we really had to reorganize our workforce and really think differently about how we're going to address this. And with branches, a lot of branches closed, a lot of them with reduced hours, we had to move quickly to enable our branch staff to do what was traditionally head office functions. And that was, again, a bit messy, but we had to do it, and was actually in the end hugely beneficial to improving our service levels. At the same time, we went on the journey of enhancing the work from home capability of our people. But some of you might have experienced supply challenges with laptops and the like. So that was, slowed us down a little bit as well. And then we got to a point where we were able to sort of partially return to the office, and at the same time work from home and suddenly become more accepted. Whereas, previously you kind of often had to beg your boss, is it okay if I work from home? Well, it was kind of just one of those things that you just did. Then, there was kind of that period of about a year where we were in and out of lockdowns, and there was a bit of this and a bit of that. And, through that period, there was that mix of work from home versus in the office. But August 21 was probably the next big shock to the system, when the entire country went into lockdown. And, for people outside of Auckland, this is the first time they've ever experienced that. And for a lot of contact centre staff, similarly, whilst they tested their work from home capability and the like, they'd actually never worked from home, for any length of time. So again, we were experiencing similar challenges, productivity challenges, people with connectivity issues at home, often just working off a laptop, trying to do a be a contact center agent without your normal dual screens and the like. We're actually in the midst of running a number of inductions. So suddenly to have to do that, either with people who are halfway through an induction or were about to start with us, wow, that was a challenge. We did it. It was successful, but there's no doubt that it just all took longer and it was all harder, and ultimately led to longer speed to competency. Again, service level stressed, but we did have the ability to leverage off the capability that we built with our branch colleagues and the like. And now, where we are now, I'll just quickly whip through this because there's a bit of this on the next slide as well, but well-established operating rhythm. Majority of staff actually very comfortable working from home. We're now doing on-site inductions, but also including remote capability. So a bit of a dual model there, which is really working well. Productivity is pretty solid, and we're really thinking about what's next now. So where we are now, so there's this really strong work from home capability, excellent BCP plans in place now. Staff enjoy and value the flexibility of work from home. The ability to pick up the kids from school and stuff like that. And obviously the travel time and cost savings. Work from home has led to reduced unplanned absence. Often people will, particularly with those fringe shifts that we have, the 7 a.m. start or the 11 p.m. finish, those early starts, late finishes, we've definitely seen more consistency there for pretty obvious reasons, I think. We've got some really good data measuring our productivity, quality, and customer experience. We've put a lot of effort into really sharpening that in a remote environment. And we've seen some real good flexibility from our contact center staff because it's a lot easier to just go, yep, I'll work an extra hour or an extra couple of hours if we need them when you're at home. And touched on before, the joint on-site remote inductions is really working well, particularly when we've had some staff in isolation and still be able to continue on with their induction, which has been awesome. What's still a real challenge is varying degrees of remote collaboration in a limited learning environment, and that often comes down to the individual. But the reality is, a lot of our role models, whether they're within the team or the team leader or the senior leaders across the organisation, they're just less visible and accessible. There is an absence of energy generated from the face-to-face engagement, and what Deepak touched on before, the isolated performance behavioural challenges, definitely more difficult to understand and correct. That can, we have seen some varying reasons for, and not always that forthcoming from some individuals, and that's proved that a bit of a challenge with the people working remotely. And the way forward from here, I think work from home, remote working, it's here to stay. It's made its mark. People like it. Some people love it. And I think it's expected that we do have that flexibility, and there's absolutely some good business benefits of it. But we are really looking at a leader-led approach to encourage a gradual return to the office. We're going to be a bit careful about that. The COVID situation can change, on a dime very quickly. So we're just going to be a little bit careful about that. But ultimately a hybrid model is something that we want to work towards, and really re-establish the culture we're looking to create. I think we've got a pretty good one, but I think it can be better with some more face-to-face time. That's all from me.
Right. Thank you, Darren. That was very good. Before Fiona steps in, one point that came out for me, just based on a couple of other interactions we've had with a range of customers and the data coming through from Snapshotz, is that contact center supervisors and leaders seem to be spending at least 20% more time than what they used to in one-on-one interactions. So what that means is that, or from data that we are seeing and the conversations we've had, what that means is an 8-hour day can actually be 9.5 or 10 hours for a supervisor. Are you guys seeing that at all, or is that something that's sort of coming through, or in the 320 odd people that you have across your team, Darren?
I would say to varying degrees. I think what we find is that there's some people that clearly need more time of their leader, either because they're demanding it or because we're recognizing they need that, and whether that's coaching or performance management or wellbeing conversations. So I think there's a bit of a mix. I think some people are very self-sufficient and effectively happy to be left alone to do a great job. And so I think there's a bit of a mix there.
Right. Fiona?
Yeah, I think, and before I start grilling Darren, because I'm going to do that, I think what we're seeing is that supervisors actually need to be more deliberate about setting aside time for their interactions to check in on their people, where when they're physically present, you can actually see those visual cues. You can't see them when somebody is working remotely. And so that time actually has to be better scheduled, where it wouldn't necessarily present itself as being one-on-one time, because it would just be an observation of whether someone has a challenge or not because they're physically present. So Darren, we've got the laser light on you now. So let's talk a bit about Bleisure and what it means in Westpac. Is Bleisure something that the organisation has recognised is happening or could be happening?
I think there's a recognition that it's happening. I think to what scale is probably not being clearly either quantified or understood. I think there's varying degrees of concern for that. I think from one perspective, well, certainly what the organisation is trying to drive is it the most important thing is the output that's being delivered. So how and where that person does that is less of a concern, and that's more broadly the organisational view. From a contact centre perspective, we're a bit more rigid. You know, we need people on the queue at designated time. We need them operating in a safe environment where the customer conversations are held in confidential environments. So we have very good metrics and call recording and, you know, customer surveys and all that sort of stuff that can alert us to any early signs of concern around that. We also have, you know, when we have our team meetings, we have a strong video on, you know, protocol, so you can see people in the background. I personally have my own rule around no fake backgrounds. Sorry, Fiona.
I can take it off, but I wouldn't do that to you.
I do like to see what's going on around them. But yeah, fair to say, probably it's, whilst we've got some mechanisms, we certainly wouldn't say we fully understand this.
Mm. Cool. I mean, and there's a private and a public background. So if I'm talking to my team, they can see the cat's kitty litter tray and whatever else is going on behind me. But when I'm doing a public presentation, then of course the Auscontact brand is key. And we don't need to share the cat's kitty litter tray. Dare I say it, or the cat in the kitty litter tray, even worse. So you talked, Darren, about performance being key, and I just wanted to understand what you do when a jagged performance is noted. What actions do you take?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing is to understand, and that, you know, it's normally bring those performance indicators to the individual themselves, and just have a bit of a chat about it. It's certainly been, one of the challenges that we've faced into over the last couple of years is truly understanding those performance indicators and the reasons for, and making sure that our responses are balanced in such a way that it's not just big stick, 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. It's, we're absolutely conscious that, the last couple of years has been really difficult for a lot of people, and frankly, most of us have had some sort of difficult experience through COVID, to varying degrees of extremity, and it's affected people in many different ways. So that's been something we've been very conscious of, and where people have been very open about that, it's been far easier to manage. Where they haven't been, it's been very difficult, and that's where the face-to-face and those visual signs that you get when people are coming into the office day after day really are a bit of a gap for us. No,
and look, that's understandable, because a lot more can be hidden when you're on camera versus when you're actually physically present. You can see, whether people are leaning into conversations, or they're, whether their shoulders are sagging or whatever it might be. So on that, one of the keys to success is around having a safe workplace, irrespective of whether it's in the office or remote. How do you understand what the home workspace looks like?
Yeah, all of our people have work from home checklists that they complete. So it is a little bit of a tick box exercise, so to speak. But we do encourage our people to take that seriously. We do talk about, particularly early on when effectively we didn't have a choice to work from home. So we knew that very early on there was some setups that were far from optimum. So Westpac went through a process of making it available to people to a bit of an allowance to help with the cost of a workplace, a work from home setup, and as I said, the video on approach to understand what that environment looks like. We're very strong focus on health and safety in general within this organisation. So it feels like we're doing quite a bit, but do I feel 100% comfortable with it? I'm not sure I'd say that.
Yeah, no, look, that's fair enough, because it's a multi-dimensional thing with people having children at home, partners at home. You work in the finance sector, so there's also, risk and compliance, which is, very compelling to adhere to. So there are all of those factors in it. So one of the things you were very strong on was talking about having a safe environment, and part of safety is around training your leadership team to have those mental health conversations. I know we're at time, but I just wonder if you could give us a short synopsis of what Westpac's done around training their leaders to have those mental health conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a number of workshops that leaders have been to over the last few years around this sort of thing, and ranging from any number of different scenarios that people can face into. The other thing, we'd have a really great team called our HR advisory team, which do a fantastic job in supporting our leaders through any of these challenges, and that's kind of our go-to. We have our conversations with our people, but we always bring our HR advisory on the journey and just check in with them and go, this is what's going on, this is what I'm doing, am I doing the right thing, is there anything else you could suggest, that sort of thing. So it's we've got some good stuff happening there, but I do still feel like doing this remotely is definitely more challenging and limited than doing it face to face.
That's I think that sentiment is shared both in New Zealand and in Australia. So thank you very much for your transparency, Darren, and your honesty around that, because you really gave us a warts and all conversation around the journey that you've personally been on, that Westpac's been on. So with that, I'm going to ask Deepak for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you for facilitating it. And Darren, that was, as Fiona said, frank and forthright. And I think that there's tremendous value in what you've said and presented, and insights for all leaders. So appreciate very much, because I think all of us are essentially going on the same journey that you are, in different ways. And from me, as Fiona said, this is a multi-dimensional world, and we need two focuses. One is one of care, and the other one is that we've got tools, data, and capabilities today to go beyond the old office environment into the workplace, as well as into the mental health arena. That is all part of this multi-dimensional work world that we live in. It's wonderful, but it also has its setbacks. With that, Fiona, I hand it over to you, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Deepak. Well, thanks, Darren and Deepak, and to everybody for joining us today, taking a bite-sized chunk around Bleisure. Let's travel it. Our next bite will be on the 29th of April, and it's called 5 Practices You Don't Want to See in Your Centre. With that, I wish you a wonderful day wherever you might be, and see you on the 29th of April. Bye, everyone.